Mark, game threes when you're up 2-0 can be especially tough, knowing that a team's going to come out and give everything they've got. What did you make of just the mindset and the approach that you guys had to have the game under control in that first quarter?
Yeah, I thought obviously Phoenix with the home crowd came in ready to go. They were fast to start the game, both in transition, and they moved the ball quickly. They're improving as the series goes in terms of the way they're attacking us. So there's stuff we need to look at to try to get that under control. But I thought our poise in the first quarter was really helpful in the game. We went down 10 very early, and those types of games, as we know, can get away from you on the road especially. And that group with Jay Will, Kaysen, Caruso, Shea, and Wiggs was really the group that got the game turned back around for us, and taking a lead out of the first quarter with the way that was going was a huge win for us.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about the bench also. 36-12, you outscore them off the bench with a pair of guys in Wiggins and McCain who hadn't really played rotation minutes yet. What'd you see in terms of their readiness and understanding of the job?
The same thing I've seen all year. This team's done a great job of being ready in all situations. Obviously, Dub going out changes the calculus a little bit, and those guys, and Isaiah Joe being out, those guys were awesome. They gave us great minutes, especially in the first half. I thought Jay Will gave us huge minutes. Chet and Hart both had fouls in the first half, and he was super valuable during that stretch as well, and in the second quarter. So, as we know, in a playoff series, you need everybody at different times to execute different things, and we had those guys step up in a big way today.
Mark, that's AJ's first playoff start. I think 20 field goal attempts is his career high. What did you see from him? How did you feel he handled the volume in that spot?
Well, he's obviously not shy, so that's a start. But you gotta winners fail and losers hide. And he wasn't hiding. So. It's one of the things I love about this team. We've got a bunch of guys that lean into the competition, and it's not always going to be perfect. I don't know what he shot from the floor. It wasn't overly efficient, but he's not shying away from the moment. He's aggressive, and he executes. I think he obviously took a lot of shots, but he executes offense, he executes defense, and it allows you to continue to bet on a guy like that. He's going to get better as the series goes and as his career goes. So I thought he was outstanding today.
You mentioned Doug being out changing the calculus. That's Shea's playoff career high. It's obvious that he maybe needs another punch. These are my words, not yours. Maybe he needs to punch up when Dub is out of the lineup. But how do you think he sort of developed that sense of what's needed when, how much output is needed? Is that something you talked to him about in the days leading up to today?
I definitely didn't talk to him. He's just so self-reliant on stuff like that. He doesn't need a ton of direction from me. But I thought he was obviously outstanding today. The efficiency was ridiculous. For him to score like that on 15 of 18 is a really impressive game. But he also sprayed the ball over the place. He threw it ahead. He obviously found those threes late for us. And I thought AJ being on the ball helped us, in a lot of situations, because they were trying to jam him up and make it hard on him. And it allows us to get him the ball in different spots on the floor when we've got a guy that can deliver it like that. So, yeah, he had a great game, obviously.
Hey, Coach Elliott, by Sports 360 AZ, we just talked about, every run that they had, you had an answer. Obviously, it's nothing new with Caruso, but what kind of presence has he brought to some of these younger guys that even on this stage, they're still delivering at the same level?
I mean, he's awesome. Obviously, he's a great competitor. He's just a gamer. Quite frankly, the bigger the moment, the more, again, same thing I said about Mitchell, he doesn't hide, he's leaning into the competition. And I thought him and Kaysen and Jay Will specifically, and then Wiggins was out there for part of that group today at multiple different stages of the game, really set a tone for us. And, they just get the energy going. They're in the right spots. They play the right way. And when you get off to a tough start like we did, you want your bench to go in and elevate the game, and that's exactly what they did today, and he was a huge part of that.
You mentioned you talked before about Shea's ability to kind of reset after like a shooting slump. It doesn't really bother him. Obviously, he didn't have to worry about that tonight going 15 for 18, but even just like where there's a call against him, on offensive charges, it seems like he doesn't really complain or gets fazed by it. Can you kind of just speak to his ability to reset in the middle of games with any form of setback?
He's got great poise and composure. I think his confidence has something to do with that. You know, he feels agency over his performance, so he's never going to let anything else or anybody else get in the way of him and his best performance. He takes full responsibility for how he performs, and I think that's why he improves. And you know, just when the game's not going your way, he's got enough experience now. You know, he's been through a lot of different things, and he knows it's going to be up and down, and he just keeps his head and just plays the next possession. It's been a great tone setter for our team. I think it's one of our team's holistic qualities, but he definitely has a lot to do with that.
You mentioned the poise early. They obviously get off to a nice start. I don't think you called your first time out until midway through the second. Can you just sort of talk about the stick-to-itiveness of like allowing those guys to sort of fight through that?
Yeah, I mean, I trust our team. You know, I trust our team, and if we can't handle tough situations, then, you know, we're not going to do very much. You know, so we got to be able to fight through it, and we did. You know, it doesn't mean I'll never call a timeout, but I thought coming on the road, it was good to just get a little exposure to that and have to grind through it, and the guys did a great job of it today, and you know, that's a good muscle for us to flex. You know, when you come on the road, we're going to need it again on Monday. This team is not a team that is going to lay down. You know, this is who they've been all year. They keep fighting. They run through they run out every ground ball. They're going to bring it on Monday, and we got to be ready for a battle.
Coach,
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Coach, this is the second straight game that Dylan Brooks has been on a heater, especially towards the end. And is there a factor in what you strategize in going against Booker and seeing how you can limit his looks and basically letting Brooks get his, or what's the approach in that way?
Yeah, we never try to let anybody do anything, but you know, you certainly have to prioritize in game planning. And when you run up against really good teams like Phoenix that have multiple really good players, you're going to give something up. And you know, to his credit, he's made tough shots, and at times we've given him open ones. At other times, you know, I thought defensively they put us in some binds today. You know, they got us behind the ball in a lot of possessions, and we can learn from that. You know, when we go and dig into the film, but credit him, he's delivered these last two games and has had great shot making, and you know, certainly somebody that we have to deal with.
Mark,
Last one for Coach.
when you say Shea feels agency over his performance, I don't think I've heard you say that. Is that just his control over the game, or the responsibility he feels?
Yeah, I just think, you know, he just is. I think it was Justin was asking me about how he responds to the adversities in the game, and he's never thrown off by anything outside of himself. You know, he's mastered the art of just staying disciplined and staying inside of himself, and controlling what he can control at a really high level. And I think that's what allows him to stay in games when things aren't going his way, and I think that's what allows him to improve, is he feels a sense of control over